Welcome back. So with yesterday's firing of Dean Evason, it means my Creed Bratton slash Dean Evason figure. Well, so much for that. And it is interesting because I don't think that the problems in Minnesota can be traced to Dean Evason, and I don't know necessarily either that players had quit on him. That's why I didn't do any videos on, is Evason on the hot seat? Is Evason going to go? I didn't think he was the problem. Now they've hired John Hynes. So it's recycling of coaches. Why? In this case, I get it. Bill Guerin wants to jump back into the playoff chase, believes that adding John Hynes behind the bench is the best way to do that. Hynes giving a presser today about all these things, blah, 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 he's going to do for the team and all that. And so for the Minnesota Wild, it's about kind of going through a reset that starts tonight. Now, the timing of the firing is interesting because, the team is 5-10-4, and they have slipped 7 points behind a playoff spot, although the number 2 wildcard spot is held by Calgary, who have played 3 more games than the Minnesota Wild. So Minnesota is off the pace, but again, the other problem is even if they can make up that distance with Calgary, there are other teams they have to catch. There are a lot of teams they have to jump over. So John Hynes taking over. Just a quick look at John Hynes' career. Of course, he was coach of the Devils from 2014 to 2019, for the Preds from 2020 through 2023. And his overall record, 284 wins, 255 regulation losses, 63 losses in extra time. And in the playoffs, his record is 4-15. Remember, this is a Minnesota team that doesn't just need to make the playoffs and find a way to get there, but a first-round loss, that's not going to make anybody happy either. So Hynes' playoff record has to be better in Minnesota than it was elsewhere. The thing is, Minnesota's kind of known for struggling in the playoffs dating back 20 years. Basically, the last time they won more than one round, I'm pretty sure this was their jersey, back in 2003. So the schedule upcoming is it's not impossible to think that Minnesota's going to turn things around a bit over these next 6 games. But with Minnesota's record, they're going to be the team that other teams are looking at and saying, hey, this is the one we've got to win, right? So it starts tonight with them at home against St. Louis. That's going to be an interesting one. St. Louis has been very up and down this year. Just crazy swings in momentum for St. Louis. And then on Thursday, they're in Nashville. Well, Nashville's on a heater right now. They've won 5 in a row. That's one of those teams they need to catch. And then Sunday, they're at home against Chicago. So the next 3 games are against divisional rivals. The next 3 games are ones they kind of have to win. If Minnesota's going to get back in the hunt, they need to win those next 3 games. And then they go on the road. That Tuesday, they're on the road in Calgary, on Thursday in Vancouver, and then Friday in Edmonton. It is kind of a weird way to schedule things, isn't it? Alberta, BC, and then back to Alberta. But at any rate, and also having Vancouver and Edmonton as the back-to-back instead of Vancouver-Calgary is also an interesting one. Since I'm pretty sure by driving distance and just distance in general, Calgary's a bit closer to Vancouver than Edmonton, but either way, it's not going to be easy to turn things around in Minnesota. And the one player that John Hynes needs to get going to really and truly turn things around is Kirill the Thrill. Kirill Kaprizov, 19 games, 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points. Those numbers aren't bad, but he's about 7 points below where we'd want to see him, right? We'd want to see him in that 100-point pace. And that minus 10 he's sporting tells you there's some defensive miscues going on while he's on the ice, and that is definitely the player they need to get going. But not just him, Matthew Boldy. Boldy, in the last game I saw them play, took a couple of bad penalties, and you can clearly see the frustration for Boldy boiling over. In 12 games, he just has 1 goal. He has 7 assists for 8 points overall, but Boldy expects to be better, and rightfully so. He should be better than what his record's been lately. Johansson, 19 games, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. They need more from him. So those 3 players have provided 8 goals so far. That is definitely where they need more. And this is a team that I think is capable of more. The other problem is the goaltending. So Fleury's record, 3-4-2, 875 save percentage. That number has to get better. Gustafsson, 2-6-2 with an 881 save percentage. Last year, Gustafsson played some of the best hockey of any goaltender in the National Hockey League, and honestly was legitimately a top 10 goalie in the NHL last year. This year, that has not been the case. He has regressed to numbers similar to what he had in Ottawa before joining the Minnesota Wild, and that simply will not fly for this team. I don't have the whole cap situation on the board. I feel like we've talked about that to death, but it is something that is definitely held over this team because of the cap situation being as it is. If you're Bill Guerin and you believe that you can salvage the season, firing the coach is the only thing you can really do here. They're not in a position to make a trade. They're definitely not in a position to add anybody. They traded out Addison. They brought in Bogosian. That's about the extent of it, and that was to try to improve the defensive numbers. There isn't really a number right now where Minnesota's excelling, so let's go through this. Goals per game, 2.95. That's 22nd in the NHL. It's interesting, too, because 10 years ago, 2.95 goals per game, it'd probably end up being top 5. The goals against per game, 3.95. That is 31st in the NHL. Only San Jose is worse, and not by much. San Jose's improved their goals against. They're now allowing 4 goals per game, which is better than the 4.4 they were at not too long ago. So for Minnesota, that's kind of the other problem, too, is that now we've got a San Jose team that's gotten better. Minnesota has not. So Minnesota's really flirting with potentially being one of, if not the worst team in the league. And adding John Hynes is with that idea that, hey, next 6 games, there's some winnable ones here if we can get our schedule turned around. But they're also going to have to get their special teams in order. Their power play, 16.2%. That's 24th in the NHL. And while that's not good enough, the penalty kill is abysmal at 66.7%. So they allow a goal on every third power play. That is 32nd in the NHL, and it's on pace for the worst ever. Now, Vancouver was on pace for the worst ever at this time a year ago, and they also fired their coach. The reality is that Vancouver improved their penalty kill towards the end of the year. Rick Tocchet's systems helped. We'll see if John Hynes can change systems up and help with the numbers, but it doesn't look good right now. So you can't be in a situation where your goaltending's not good enough, your penalty killing is abysmal, because what can happen is you end up playing scared. You don't want to take a penalty. You also don't want to allow shots. So maybe you're not making those big moves, that you're not attacking in the offensive zone, because you know if you turn that puck over, there's a good chance it could end up going in the net at your end. So it can have a really negative effect on the team, and I think that's part of what we've seen with Minnesota, where there's just this whole negative aura around the team, and even in a game where they're playing it pretty well, they somehow find a way to lose it. That's been the case lately. They are 2-6-2 in their last 10, and it hasn't mattered where they played. They're 3-4-2 at home and 2-6-2 away from home. They went overseas. They had a couple of good games in Stockholm. Didn't win them, but they had a couple of good games. But that's the thing. Not winning games when you're playing well. Now, what's interesting is they came into the league the same year as Columbus. Columbus, I said for weeks before they turned it around, they had a good game, but they lost. They had a good game, but they lost. Columbus has started winning games now. Columbus has figured it out. The problem is, of course, you've lost so many games before you start to figure it out. Have you lost too much ground? There's the possibility that Minnesota, if they keep playing the way they have been over their last 6 games, that they're going to start winning their share of games as well. But again, are they too far out? And I've seen that question being asked in the media too. The firing of Dean Evason, is there a point? Is it too late? Again, I don't think Evason was the problem. I don't think that Dean Evason's going to be out of work for very long. I think Woodcroft and Evason are two coaches that are out there that could end up becoming a pretty good choice for another team at some point soon. Now, shots per game, they're getting 30.8 shots per game. They're allowing 30.9. So they're not being tooled around or anything when it comes to shots. Faceoffs are a problem too, 46%. That's 29th. Eriksson, decent in the faceoff circle. They've had struggles outside of that. Hartman is second in faceoffs on the team in terms of numbers taken, and his winning percentage is in the low 40s. So that doesn't work, right? Because think about this. You put this in with the rest of the picture. So you're losing a lot of faceoffs. You're also your penalty kill is bad. Your goaltending has not been strong enough. Your defense needs to get better. And the other team's starting with the puck more often than not. It's just, while faceoffs can be overblown at times, in this case, I think it's a good example of how everything's kind of gone wrong for Minnesota. And if any one aspect of their team starts to get better, it may improve another aspect. The faceoffs have to get better. Whether that means Guerin having to go out and find a faceoff specialist, which, I mean, there's some out there, but they're not necessarily cheap. It's part of the reason the Islanders went out and got Horvat last year. Horvat's really good in the faceoff circle, and the Islanders were getting manhandled in the faceoff circle at the time. So I don't think there's a Bo Horvat out there right now, but they definitely need something to improve when it comes to faceoffs. Now, scoring by period. In the first period, they're scoring 16 goals. They've allowed 29, so they're starting late. This is a problem as well, and they're not the only team in the league that's having a problem with starting on time. Second period, they're actually a positive there. They've scored 17 and allowed 16. In the third period, they're scoring 23. They've allowed 28. So, again, it's a negative in the first, it's a negative in the third. So, if you have any kind of a lead, well, it's gone. In the overtime, they haven't scored. They've allowed 2 goals in the overtime. And, of course, they've also lost 2 in shootouts. So, this is a team having struggles with winning almost any circumstance. The win is the problem. Leading after 1, they've only done it twice. They won both games. Leading after 2, they've only done it 3 times. They won 2 games and they lost 1 in extra time. Trailing after 1, they're very, very well acquainted with that. They are 1-7-3 trailing after 1. Trailing after the second, they're 2-8-2. So start on time, get your face off. It feels like with Minnesota, I'm saying, in other words, you have to fix everything. You have to make sure this team starts on time. You have to get those goals first. You have to improve your special teams. You have to score more. You have to allow less. Your goaltending has to be better. Your star player has to improve. You also need better scoring from your other young star player in Boldy and a guy that you signed for decent money in Johansson, who's supposed to be a good goal scorer, should be on about a 20-goal pace. There really are a lot of areas to look at in Minnesota. If you ask a Minnesota Wild fan right now, what do you think the biggest problem in Minnesota with the Wild is, their answer might be yes. Because I don't know if there's anything on this team that has gone really well. So I understand firing Evason, but I still don't know that he necessarily was the problem. But one thing with Hynes, when he took over for Nashville, they got better. And their record got better, right? So, yes, he does end up being fired by Nashville, the same as he was for the New Jersey Devils. But if you're looking for a coach that might give them that temporary bump, he very well could be the guy. But a lot of things have to improve for Minnesota, a lot. And the odds of all of these things improving, I don't like their chances. But my wife's a big fan of the Minnesota Wild, so on some level, I do hope they turn things around. Not this next Thursday game against Vancouver, though. They can lose that one. I'm okay with that. But the other 5, sure. I don't have any skin in the game there. Sure, why not? But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Was firing Evason the right move? Is hiring John Hynes the right move? And is this team at this point beyond being able to salvage this season? And then there's another question I'll throw out there. If this team just bombs out, if their record doesn't get better, all these numbers hold up, John Hynes can't turn it around, is Bill Guerin's job then on the line at the end of this year, or does he get extra time to try to turn this around? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you have not done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.